My name is Mary. I'm an Enterprise Customer Success Manager here at MaintainX, which means I help customers ensure that MaintainX is bringing value to their operations. So if I work with you, it's nice to see you. And if I haven't had a chance to work with you yet, I hope we do in the future. And at least we get to spend this next hour together. So thank you for joining today. And I'll hand over to Anoja.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Anoja. I'm going to be co-hosting this webinar today with Mary, and I'm a product education specialist here at MaintainX. So I essentially create training content and learning experiences to help you all learn more about our platform. So I don't work with a ton of you personally, but I'm here rooting for all of you and trying to make sure that you guys are getting the most value out of MaintainX.
I know she's always on your team.
Yes, I'm always here. I'm in the back corner. I'm your little cheerleader in the back, just like rooting you all on. So we're 2 minutes in. Should we get started? I think we're okay. Okay. All right. Cool. So yeah, welcome everyone to today's topic. Speaking of learning experiences, one of those experiences is this one that you're in right now. So this webinar is a part of our 101 webinar series, which we aim to run twice every quarter. And we try to teach you folks about a certain set of features related to a specific topic. So today's topic is all about asset management, which some of you may know is one of the core components of MaintainX. So definitely a very important topic. We're going to be running through what asset management is, digitizing your assets, then monitoring asset status, and finally measuring asset health. Now, if all that sounds like a foreign language, all good. We're going to get into it very soon. And yes, we do record this session, and we'll send you a link to that recording at some point today. And throughout this webinar, if you have any questions, then please do submit them. There is a Q&A button on the right side of your screen. Let me rewind. Any questions about asset management? So if you have any questions about asset management, please go ahead, submit them using that Q&A button on the right side. We have some members from the support team here today, Adrian and Paula, who will work on getting you answers to those questions live. Next, we have a little bit about MaintainX. So let me just quickly say that our mission here is to transform the way that frontline professionals manage the equipment and facilities that power our world. So we're focused on building tools that make a real impact on the people doing the work. And we're building for the long term with constant innovation in areas like mobile workflows, real-time analytics, and open APIs to make sure our platform grows with your needs. But most importantly, we partner closely with our customers. So our team brings real industry experience from a wide variety of industries so that we can develop and support tools that actually solve the day-to-day challenges that you face. Now, Mary and I are obviously going to speak very highly about MaintainX, but if you need some proof from anyone else outside of us, then you can see some of the awards that we've received from G2 this past quarter. Now, some of you maybe came to MaintainX because you've seen some of the big names that we've partnered with, but we do want to stress that MaintainX is built for a wide variety of industries and company sizes. So whether you're a global corporation or a local mom and pop shop, we have tools for everyone. Okay. All right. I know you're thinking, come on, Anoja, I came here to learn about asset management. So, let's get into it. So Mary, I'm going to come back to you. And could you please tell us, what is an asset and what do we mean by asset management? And why is this topic so important? And also, how do assets connect to our daily maintenance work?
Sure thing. Let's start out with some definitions, shall we? So an asset is a piece of physical equipment, right? It can be machinery, it could be infrastructure, it could be equipment, it could be anything really that you work on that's used at a facility. They're typically long lasting and they require ongoing maintenance to ensure performance. Now, I'm sure we all have a few ideas of what our assets could be, but before we go any further, we did want to make one kind of large clarification, and it's a pretty commonly asked question that we get here. Is should this be an asset or should this be a part? So just to give an idea here, an asset is typically something that has long-term usage with low turnover. It's something that you track individually. We want to know what's happening with this specific asset. Now, a part is something with short-term usage, typically high turnover, and you may track it in aggregate. You may receive them in a box. You may track them in multiples of however many. They're much far less consequential than an asset may be. A good rule of thumb before we move forwards is that if a component is consumable and meant to be replaced frequently, it's likely a part, not an asset. So now we've cleared that up. Let's get into some examples of assets here. So I'll start with manufacturing. I've just put in a couple of examples here. We have conveyor belts, industrial robots. I think assets for manufacturing, it's usually pretty clear, right? What we would consider an asset. For fleet management, again, fairly clear. We're going to have our fleet. We're going to have, for example, some delivery vans, but you may also track things like your vehicle lifts. That is still an asset that needs maintaining. For facilities and property management, you may be looking at something like air conditioners and kitchen appliances. Those are still pieces of equipment we want to maintain and maybe track and make sure we know when to replace. And for hospitality, we're looking kind of at property management, maybe just a little bit more industrial, right? So I've got some industrial washers there and some elevators as well. Now, all 8 of these examples, you can imagine, we're not tracking them in bulk. We're not replacing them every other day. These are something that we keep for a long time. We want to maximize the lifespan of, and we want to repair as much as possible. Beautiful. So I know what an asset is. What is asset management? And I think you asked, Noja, why is that so important? So asset management is the process of acquiring, deploying, operating, maintaining, and decommissioning assets. So you can think of it as an entire asset life cycle in there. We want to make sure that we're on top of it every step of the way. The goal is to get the most value out of every asset by keeping them running longer with fewer failures and at the lowest cost. Effective asset management, as I've put here, leads to a higher return on investment. If you spend 50K on an asset and it lasts you 10 years, that's not as great a return on your investment as if you spent 50K on an asset that lasted you 20. If we have it up and running for more of the time, again, we're increasing that return on investment. Now, we want to do this so that we can build greater operational resilience, so that we can increase our production capacity, and so that we can optimize our future asset spending as well. Now, stat here, 5 to 20% of production capacity can be lost due to poor asset management practices. When asset management is disorganized or reactive, equipment failures, delays, and inefficiencies, they really start to build up, right? Something that might seem small one day can build up a lot over time. And that's why a structured approach is really critical to making sure that we keep our operations running smoothly and we keep our assets as long as possible in the best condition we can.
Okay, so like we said, we do like to get to know you folks and your needs. So here's a poll that we have for you. Now, we want to know, how are you currently managing your assets? Are you using a CMMS like MaintainX? Are you using an enterprise asset management system? Are you utilizing spreadsheets like Excel, or do you not have a system yet? And for this poll, you'll see a little button on the right side of your screen that says poll. You can go ahead and click there and submit your answer there, or you might even see the poll pop up in the chat window. So either one of those areas, you'll be able to find that poll and you can go ahead and submit your answer there. And then also, if you're using a combination of a few, go ahead and select what is probably the one that you use majority of the time.
Oh, we got a lot of answers coming in. This is great.
Yay. I love that. I love when we have lots, reading all the data.
Okay, awesome. So we have our results there. Good news, 70% of us, 71% actually, are currently using a CMMS to manage our assets. 7% are using an enterprise asset management system, 13% spreadsheets, and 9% no system yet. Now, this is really great. Every time that we give this webinar, on this topic, we really do see the trending towards using the CMMS more and more and more. We can get into in a little bit why it's so important to keep those two things connected, but I'm happy to see that that is the case, and maybe we can help improve some of those practices for you today.
Okay, so Mary, go ahead and take a sip of water or a breath, but very quickly, because I'm going to come back to you in just a minute to talk about asset digitization. So we've already established the value of good asset management, but let's talk about taking that first step. So Mary, could you break down for us, what is asset digitization? What are the benefits of using MaintainX to digitize our assets? And what best practices should we follow when digitizing our assets? That's the best mistake to make on a
Oh,
webinar.
incredible. It's one every time. We've got to do it. So asset digitization, it is the practice of creating and maintaining digital records of your actual physical assets. So it's one thing to have physical assets, another thing to have a digital record of it. It to be lays the foundation, right, for modern asset management, because when your records are digitized, when they're digital, they are accessible, they're searchable, and they're also connected to your maintenance operations. Now, I mentioned this is important before, and that's why I'm so happy to see that 71% are already using CMMS for that. We need our assets to be connected to our maintenance operations. Fundamentally, those two things are just enmeshed, right? We maintain those assets, we bring the value. That's what we do. In simple terms, if we have everything connected, we have all our equipment in one place, it's making it easier for the right people to take action when something goes wrong. And that's what helps your production keep moving smoothly. So a couple of quick kind of benefits here. Firstly, you're getting centralized and real-time data. So nothing gets lost in paper trails or outdated spreadsheets. If we have decentralized data, things are bound to slip through the cracks. If we have everything in one place, much more likely to keep on top of everything. Second point, you can update records with agility so that your asset info is reflecting what's actually happening on the floor. We have those live updates. We can always get an immediate snapshot of what's going on. And third point here, everything's integrated with your maintenance database. So you can link assets directly to procedures, to work orders, and to historical activity. There are so many connections that you can build there. Fun stat, we like a statistic on this show. 45.7% of machinery maintenance in US manufacturing is reactive. That's a lot. That means that many teams are waiting for something to break before they act, which usually means more downtime and higher costs, and overall more work for your team if we're constantly putting out fires. Now, digitizing your assets gives your team the information they need to get ahead of issues, update records in real time, and connect asset history directly to your maintenance plans.
So we're going to do a little demo here in just a second of digitizing your assets. But first, we've got another poll here. So what percentage of your assets are currently digitized? Is it between 0 to 25%, between 26 to 50%, between 51 to 75%, or between 76 to 100%? I know those are very specific numbers. So again, just do a little guesstimate of where you're currently at.
And if you're in manufacturing or an industrial setting, I'd like you to think not only about your overall assets, say a production line, but think about sub-assets as well. Think about not only your compressor, but its motor. Think about things like that. Oh, we're getting a good spread here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no wrong answers, right, guys? We're not going to tell you off for doing it one way or another. All right, we have our results here. About a quarter of people have less than a quarter of their assets currently digitized. Now, that's okay. Is it the ideal setup? Maybe not, but you're here today, which is wonderful. So hopefully we can give you some tools that you need to be able to do this, see the value in doing this. We have about 30%, somewhere between 26 and 75%. That's great. We're on a path. We're getting things in. And we have about 40% of people between 75 and 76%, I should say, and 100%. So that's great. The bulk of people have that many digitized. That's wonderful. Let's go into how to digitize the remaining portion of your assets, maybe add in some more information, and then how can we use them from there? So let's take you right into MaintainX, shall we? Let's take a look at asset digitization. We've talked a lot about it, but I do find it is helpful to just kind of see things in practice. So I want to take you through just a few options here. And in this section, I'm going to digitize a couple of assets. I'm going to digitize my Komatsu forklift, and I'm going to digitize my painting robot there. Now, there are really three main ways we'll talk about today of adding assets into MaintainX. So let's start right here with our forklift. It's very cute. So here I am in MaintainX. Now, interestingly, I'm actually not going to recommend that you start by adding a new asset here. What I'm going to recommend is that we go to the asset hub. Now, a lot of people may not have used this so far, especially if you digitized the bulk of your assets a while ago. So please do take some time after our call today to come and take a look at getmaintainx.com/assets. So this is available to you. You can use it if you're using MaintainX. Now, what this is literally a hub of assets and their information, right? So if I come in here, I'm able to explore thousands of assets. So I had my Komatsu forklift. I'm going to search that up. Voila, there we go. So you can see I've got a range of options in here, and I can see the model as well. Now I happen to know that this is the correct model that I was looking for, so I'm going to open this up. And what I can immediately see is it's not just got, the name, the manufacturer, and the model. It has an image. It has 2 documents and manuals here, 2 work order templates I can use, 2 procedures, and 151 parts that are related to it. Now, in just one click, install asset package, I am able to pull all of that information into MaintainX. And if I want to see a little bit more information on, what are these parts, these documents and manuals, I can scroll down and I can see the information that's going to be in here. Now, if you're thinking, Mary, I really want the procedures, I don't want the parts, you do have the discretion when installing this to be able to say, I want this section and not this section. So all you need to do to install this is click Install Asset Package. Simple as that. Now, I recommend doing this because it's going to save you a lot of time rather than digitizing the asset and then later having to come back for your procedures and then your parts and then everything else. Why not look at a one-stop shop? So first point of call always when digitizing an asset, come see if the information is already here. If it's not already here, which you'll see when we start typing something, got a big thing in here that does not exist. Is it going to let me? There we go. No asset found. So we can request an asset in here as well. So if there's something you use a lot that you're missing, you can always request it and we'll see if that can be added. Now, what if my asset doesn't exist here, right? I'm requesting asset. I don't want to just sit down and wait for that to come through. I still have to do my job. I have to digitize my assets. So I have 2 more methods to take you through. So we'll digitize our second asset in here, the painting robot. Now I'm in my assets tab on MaintainX. All I need to do is go into the top right-hand corner and go on Create New Asset. I'm going to give it its name. Beautiful. And then I'm going to add in the relevant information. So if I have any files, which I believe I do, I'm going to select them here and open them so they can be attached to my asset. I very much recommend doing this, again, centralizing your information. And I can link it to many things. I can link it to a location. I can give it a criticality. I'm just going to say that is important. I can even add in any information that I want here. Now, what you're seeing on screen right now, these are custom fields that I've added to MaintainX. You can add as many custom fields as you like. You can change them, you can add them, you can remove them. So it's really customizable to what you need. I'm going to put in my manufacturer. And create that. There we go. And I can even put in my model number, really give this a good amount of information in here. Can't spell. There we go. Beautiful. I can give it an asset type. Give that robotics. And I can even link it to other parts. I can give it a parent assets that it has a hierarchy. I can link it to a vendor. I can put in any information I really need here. And all I need to do is click create. And just like that, I have an asset. Now, I do want to show you quickly an asset hierarchy. So I'm going to go into my air compressor here. And you can see that within a given asset, you can have sub-assets here. And underneath those assets, you could even add another sub-asset. We have up to 5 levels of hierarchy that you can take advantage of. Now, keep them simple, keep them straightforward, but you can have them in there. Now, you may be wondering why at first I mentioned I really think it's valuable to put your manuals in. A, centralized information, your team can use them, but also you're then able to use Copilot, which is MaintainX's AI tool. You can go in there, pop in a question saying, hey, what parts does this use? Hey, what's the quarterly PM that this should do? And it will give you that information by reading through your manual, saving you a bunch of time and mental energy and space from reading a usually very dense and not very exciting manual. So this is great. I'm able to really customize what I put in MaintainX and how I digitize an asset. But I'm sure a few of you are thinking, Mary, I have thousands of assets to digitize, and that's going to take me a week that I don't have. Don't worry. We have a bulk import tool as well. So if you have your assets listed in a spreadsheet, for example, or you can even use our template right here, You can fill out the information that you want to put in, add any columns for custom fields, and you can actually import that into MaintainX in bulk. To do so, you're just going to go to the drop down here and click import from CSV. You'll be able to download our template there or upload yours in your own format as long as it is in those kind of columns. And then you can just run through the steps and you will have all of your assets in one go. This is usually something that's very helpful if you're transitioning over from another system, or for those, I think it was 13% of people that already track your assets in a spreadsheet. You have the information you need. Let's just pull it into MaintainX. Awesome. So that was a fair amount of information, I think, on there. I hope we're feeling a little bit more comfortable with digitizing assets. Now, I'm going to give you some kind of best practices here. The first one is to use clear and standardized naming conventions with simple hierarchies. As I say, we want to keep it straightforward. We want to make things searchable for our team. Second point, attach digital manuals to your assets. That is the gift that keeps on giving. I've never had a customer regret attaching a manual. Third point, use the asset import feature to upload multiple assets at a time. And fourthly, import asset packages from the asset hub when possible. It's great to have that information direct from the OEM, right? And with that, I think we can conclude asset digitization.
Yeah, I think so. Lots of great information there. Lots of ways to import your asset data into MaintainX. It doesn't have to be a scary process, but we promise it's not a scary process. All right, so let's keep it going with monitoring asset status. So Mary, could you tell us about what asset status is and what it tells us? How do custom statuses and downtime types help with clarity? And where can you see and adjust the status of an asset?
Absolutely. So an asset status, you may have guessed it, it's the status of your asset. It is the operational state of an asset, and it's used to track its availability and performance across failures, both within and across facilities as well. That's good to know. So benefits of accurate asset status tracking include really a few things. One, informed budget allocation. If we know that something's going down all of the time, we're probably going to want to replace it. Two, extended asset lifespans. If we are noticing that something might have had a few failures back to back, or mean time between failures has decreased for that given asset, we're going to want to go in and make sure we're adjusting something like our PM plan, right? So we can better tailor our maintenance to that actual asset, not just the SKU or the model type, but that individual asset in order to expand its lifespan. Third point, increase part and labor efficiency. We don't want to be overly preventive. We don't want to be overly reactive, but we can use the historical information on the status of our assets to be able to make better decisions as to how and when we maintain our assets. Fun stat here, 85% of facilities reported a decrease in downtime incidents, yet nearly 30% reported an increase in downtime costs. So although downtime incidents are down, downtime themselves are becoming more costly. A lot of people attribute this to rising parts and shipping costs, for example, and maybe longer lead times as well. But that makes it more important than ever to know where your equipment stands. Tracking your asset status is going to help you to use your parts, your time, and your budget more efficiently by reducing the guesswork and increasing visibility across locations. If you're one of my customers, you know I harp on about this every single day, but data is your best friend. So let's get you the right data and allow you to use it properly to better, maximize what we have on hand. And a little poll.
So hopefully everyone saw this coming. And just a reminder to answer the questions on the right side of your screen, or it might be at the bottom, even if you've minimized your window, you'll see a tab that says polls. So just click on that and you'll see the poll question there. So this one is, how are you currently tracking asset uptime and downtime? Are you using SCADA systems? Are you using IoT sensors? Are you using an EAM? Are you utilizing MaintainX, or are you currently not tracking asset status?
We'll give you just a couple of minutes and then I'll dive into those results with you. I always love seeing the polls come in. It's really fun to get, we have hunches, we have suspicions. I have ideas, but it's nice to see the actual practical responses here.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Should we take a look at those? All right. So we gave you a few options. You can select as many as you would like. And interestingly, About 43% of people not currently tracking asset statuses. That is exactly what we anticipate. Kind of the next stage. If you think about the maintenance maturity sort of process, you're starting with pure reactive, you want a preventive and proactive condition based and up in there. And really tracking your asset status can feel a few steps past like your reactive maintenance, right? So it is something that we build to over time. But within MaintainX, we're going to give you the tools so you have that right at your fingertips. And no matter where you are at in your maintenance maturity, you'll be able to start using that and feeling the benefits of it. 49% of you using MaintainX. That's what I like to hear. And beyond that, we have about 8% of people SCADA, IoT, or an EAM. Now, of course, SCADA and IoT quite advanced, right? We're getting automated information into maybe a historian, wherever you're storing that information, that tells you live if something's up or down. That can, of course, come into MaintainX. So if you're ever interested in kind of automating those statuses, you let us know. We can build those connections. But let's give everyone some information. I would love it if the next time that we give this webinar, we see a change in these responses here. So let's see if we can give you the information to allow you guys to do so. Demo time, monitoring asset status. So it's something, like I say, it can often feel a little bit intimidating to do so, but I really want to show you how flexible MaintainX is in allowing you to monitor your asset status. Because before we start making these decisions and monitoring health and things like that, we just have to get the information in. That's step one, get the information in. So let's take a look at, firstly, what is an asset status in MaintainX? So I'm going to go to just a regular asset. Let's look at my air compressor. You see right now its current status is offline tool failure. See if I go on this drop down, I have a few different options. Now you may have seen this in your account. By default, the system will come with 3 asset statuses. 1, online, obviously it's working. 2, offline, it's down. And that encompasses both planned and unplanned times. We'll get into that. And 3, do not track. Do not track is usually for a decommissioned asset, I would say. Now you see in here, I actually have a fair few of custom asset statuses that you may want to add in your account. And I recommend using these for the actual root cause of a downtime, or in vague terms. So I have, for example, an electrical fault in here, or a tool failure. Now I know where that's coming from, but I might want to add some more here. I might want to change this. So to do that, you've just got to go to your settings, and then we go to features. Within here, we navigate to the correct module. So of course, we're looking at assets right now, and I want to look at my asset statuses. Now here I can see all of my current asset statuses in here. I'm going to add a new one in. Just like that, we've changed our list. Now I do recommend to my customers, try keep this between, I like to say around 5, but 5 to 10 max. If you get overly granular in here, it's actually just getting more confusing for your technicians. It doesn't give you anything. It might actually overcomplicate your reporting, and people are less likely to use it if they're having to do work to read through them anyway, so the data we get wouldn't be reliable. So keep them simple. Best practice there. Now, how do we actually record our asset statuses? How do we record when something has changed status? Well, the first place is right where we were before. On the asset itself, whether on mobile or on desktop, you can simply click on this and change its status. So I'm going to say this is actually back online. And I can say when it's been online since as well. And I can choose a date and time. And I can get really granular in here. So I'm going to say this has been online since 13/13, 1:13 p.m. And I can choose if I want to update parent and sub assets, which I think I do in this case. There we go. We're back online. As easy as that. It's back up and running. Now, you might not want your team to go all the way into an asset to then change its status, right? Hopefully your team is living pretty much within their work order module. I have good news for you. We can do the same thing within the work order module. So let's take a look at this work order right here. I'm going to scroll down and see the asset that's assigned. Now, my Delta robot currently says online in production, but I happen to know that's not the case. Let's take this offline. There we go. Here's where I can select if it is a planned or unplanned downtime, which is why I do not recommend using a custom asset status for planned or unplanned. The system's already capturing that. This is actually unplanned, and it's been offline since about an hour ago. And there we go. We change it via the work order itself. Again, exactly the same process on mobile. Really easy. If your team is looking at the work order, they're looking at an asset, it's down, they can log it right then and there without having to change screens. Now, what about if it's actually not one of our team that notices this? What about if it's someone else in the facility? They've seen it and they've wanted to put in a request for our maintenance team. Boy, do I have good news on that front as well. Well, what we're going to do is I'm just going to flip my permissions so that I'm actually a requester user. Now, as we all know, a requester user can submit requests in MaintainX. It's a far simpler account. So you see, they can't see my assets tab. They can't pull up an asset and go change the status that way. They can't see my work orders either. So what can they do? Well, when they make their request, they give it a title. Just like usual, they can choose who to assign it to, and they can put in their asset. Right here, as soon as they attach the asset, they're also able to log, this is offline. Unplanned, wasn't expecting it. Offline since, let's say just right now. And there we go. So even from a request, they can submit it. We're really giving everyone access to be able to log things as soon as possible in here. So we've gone through changing the asset status from the asset. We've gone through changing it via a work order, and we've gone through changing it via a request as well. But what about if we wanted to make that a bit more automatic? Now, I'm very quickly going to run through this with you. If you would like more information on it, there's a lot of material on the website, things like that we can look into. But there is a way to do it automatically. And that would be via essentially a meter automation. So if we scroll down to our automations module right here, what an automation does is it says, if X condition is met, do Y. So I'm going to say vibration equals 0. Now I can choose what I want to trigger in here. So I'm going to pick my relevant meter. This is that same asset we were looking at before. It's its vibration sensor. And I'm going to say when this is equal to 0, when we get a reading in of 0, and you could choose if it's just for one reading, for multiple, or if it's for a reading longer than a set amount of time. I'm just going to say even once. Then what I want to do is change the asset status. If that vibration's at 0, I'm pretty damn sure that asset is offline. And I'm also pretty certain that's going to be unplanned. All I need to do is click create. And there we go. If that condition is met by information coming in, say from our sensors or from manual meter readings in our work orders, we're automatically going to change the asset status that way. Beautiful. Okay, so 4 ways so far: asset, work order, request, automation. That's a lot of information there. And I'm sure you might be thinking, okay, I get a lot of information in. A lot of ours is going to be recorded manually. People make mistakes. How can I trust what's going to come in? Well, again, we do have the ability to edit asset statuses. So if I go into one of my assets and I pull up my Delta robot that I just put offline, I'm going to actually open up my control center right here, where I have all of my information on the meters attached to my asset. I have the previous uptime, downtime information in here. I'm going to look at 6 months. I'm seeing a lot of historical information. Now, when that very silly Mary actually came in here and recorded this downtime, she said that it went offline 1 hour and 3 minutes ago. That's incorrect. It went offline only 3 minutes ago. So I'm going to edit this status and say, no, it wasn't since 1:30. It was since 2:30. And I can update it right there. I could even do the same thing to delete it if something was logged, in complete error. But I do have the ability to go in there and actually make changes. But how do I notice that, right? How do I notice if someone's put something in incorrectly? I do often point my customers to keep an eye. I firstly always recommend they live in table view on assets anyway. I find it far easier. But I recommend that they keep an eye in here and they actually filter by the status. So I can pull up all of my assets right now that are offline and just double check if everything's looking good. A lot of information today. Who knew assets was such a large topic? Some best practices here, of course, to recap. Firstly, standardize asset status options with clear names and codes. It's very important that they are simple and they are legible to the people who will be recording that asset has changed status. 2, train your teams on how to change the status of an asset, including retroactive changes. So going back and, changing things past the time and updating them. 3, use requests to be notified of downed assets and change their status while assigning maintenance. This is going to be really helpful. If something comes in, someone's logged it as just offline, you can then actually say, yeah, this is offline, operator error, whatever you need to, but at least that's already being recorded. And fourth point, regularly review asset status history to spot gaps, errors, or patterns in your data. All are really, really handy to be able to see.
All right. So, Mary, we've digitized our assets. We are diligently tracking our asset status. And all of that is for what? To measure our asset health, right? I think that's what it's all about. So, Mary, can you tell us about what asset health is? Why should we keep a close eye on our asset health? And how do we leverage our CMMS to maximize our asset health?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one of the major benefits originally of digitizing our assets was to be able to do this, right? To be able to measure our asset health, to make changes, to be able to improve our practices. So, let's get into this. Now that we've digitized, now that we've monitored the status, we're getting that information in. How do I use that data? Well, your asset health is going to be the overall measure of the asset's condition over time. So it's definitely something we're going to want to look into. It uses real time and historical data to measure reliability and identify risks. This allows us to identify issues early. It allows us to avoid costly breakdowns, as much as possible. It also allows us to perform data informed maintenance. These are all things we're going to want to do if we're going to want to achieve more with less and basically just be super efficient as a company. The current average cost of unplanned downtime is $25K an hour, with large organizations seeing costs climb as high as $500,000 an hour. So, it's immediately evident why we want to keep things up and running as much as possible and why we need to use that asset health information. It's to try and avoid as much of this as possible.
Okay, so another poll, and folks, I promise this is the last poll for today. And just a little heads up, we will be doing a frequently asked questions section at the end. So this time we'll answer some of your questions. But for now, here's our last question for you. How are you currently measuring the health of your assets? So essentially, how are you looking at their availability? How are you looking at root cause analysis? How are you looking at overall equipment effectiveness? Are you using I tried to say the ABC. A, asset health reports in MaintainX. Are you doing B, a separate system like an EAM or an ERP? Or C, manual reporting, so something like Excel? And again, hit that poll button on right side of your screen, bottom left. It's somewhere there, okay? Just click on it, folks, and you'll be able to submit your answer over there.
Beautiful. We're already getting a fair amount of responses in. And is this a choose one and done, Anosha, or is this a multiple choice one?
Yeah, just choose one and done.
Beautiful. All right. Cool. That was quick. Let's take a look. How are we currently measuring the health of our assets? We've got a nice split here as well. Manual reporting, Excel takes the biggest share, 43%. Unsurprising, I think Excel has been the backbone of many industries for a long time, but it requires a lot of manual work and leaves the door open for error, right? If we're taking data in any way and manually manipulating it, errors occur. 38% are using asset health reports in MaintainX. That is awesome that you guys are using that. I hope you're getting value from it. I hope we can show you a few new tips and tricks today, or how did I set that information. Great to hear you're already using it. And 19% are using a separate system, whatever it may be. I'd be very curious to know how you guys are managing that. So if you want to drop that in the chat, I'd love to know. But here's my area of expertise. Let's get into a demo of asset health within MaintainX. Now, this for me is one of my favorite areas in the system. I do happen to be partial to a bit of reporting, but also with working with our customers here for the last 3 years, I've seen how much this can actually practically change maintenance practices, right? It's going to go and give you a lot of information that can confirm hunches you may already have, and then give you the tools to illustrate what you need, be it more headcount, be it a replacement for this asset, be it whatever it might be, right? This is what gives you the ammo you need to make changes in your organization. There's a few different places that I'll direct us today, but I'll start simple. So we'll start within an individual asset, and this is something that's available to any premium customer. If you go to see more, where we went before, this is our full asset control center, right? So per asset, I am able to see the full history here, and I'm able to see its uptime, its unplanned downtime, and its planned downtime. You can export this as well if you would like to do so, but you can see a lot of information in here and maybe start piecing some things together, particularly if you have a fair few meters applied in here. Now, we do have something new coming here, which is very exciting, called Insights, where you can get actual insights on this given piece of equipment. But I'm going to hold tight on that one, and we'll see what happens as that comes out. I do hope you enjoy it, so keep an eye out for that. But before we get there, what about if we want to view all this information together, right? I mean, it's going to take me a long time to go one by one through my assets and look at them, and then, write down my findings and compare them to the next one. What about if I want to pull everything into one place? Well, for that's what we use our asset health dashboard for. So I'm going to go into reporting, and you may usually come in here on the work orders reporting page, but we're actually going to go into asset health here. The asset health dashboard pulls data specifically from the asset statuses, right? So anything that you've logged, edited, those kind of things, that's what this is pulling from, whereas your work orders is pulling directly from work order information. Now, we don't have time to go through absolutely every report in here today, but what I do want to go through is a couple of highlights in here. So firstly, just the top control panel here. And it updates, fairly frequently. This was the last minute. So every time you refresh it, this will update. I can see here my total asset availability in the last 30 days. I'm currently sitting at 96%, which could be better, but not so terrible. I can see how many assets I currently have online, how many I currently have in an unplanned downtime situation, and how many are offline for planned maintenance. The first place I direct my customers to in here is this very top graph, this most problematic assets. And of course, you can set your date range right at the top here, so looking at information that you want. But what this shows us is, on an asset level, how much unplanned downtime have we had? How many failures have we had? How much have we spent on it in labor and parts cost? And what is its availability percentage? Now, I like having these four numbers together because they can actually show us a very different picture. For example, if I click on the title, it organizes it highest to lowest. So my air compressor has the highest amount of unplanned downtime. So is that my most problematic asset? Well, let's see. My asset with the most amount of failures is actually production line 1. So I might want to look into that, even though it's only a short amount of unplanned downtime. Which ones cost me the most in labor and parts? Something different, it's my jib crane. And which has the lowest availability overall? That's going to be my Delta robot. So it's really important that we're able to slice and dice this information and look into it and make comparisons depending on which metric is the most important to our organization, so we can get the information that we want. Now, looking at this group by asset is great because a lot of the time we do want individual, granular asset level data, but this is a lot of information. I mean, there's going to be a huge amount of assets in here when you've digitized everything. So there's a couple of different ways I like to recommend that we narrow it down. First one is to always log the criticality of your asset, just like we did at the beginning. And the reason I say that is because I want to filter by critical. Typically, I recommend if something's critical, if it goes down, we have a pause to our production. If something's important, we might have a replacement, or it going down, it might be, say, a line that splits into two and comes back together. We might be down to 50% production. If it's normal, it's probably a forklift, something like that. So really segment your information so that you're seeing what you want to look at. Now I have that same information, but just for my critical assets. So I'm looking at more insightful information. The other thing I would recommend doing, a lot of people don't notice, if we have groupings right here. Now, grouping by asset is great, but grouping by asset type I find to be the most helpful. Why? Because it's going to be easier to tackle changes at an asset type level. I can come in here, I can see, okay, my robotics is clearly an issue here. It's got 81% availability when everything else is above 92. So what am I going to do? I'm going to look into robotics as a whole. I'm going to look into our personnel. I'm going to look into our practices, our PM structures and frequencies for robotics. And I'm going to tackle this based on that asset type as opposed to trying to do different, really segmented individual assets. So your most problematic assets, that's a really helpful graph that I would definitely recommend taking a look into as a priority. There's 3 more that I'll show you. The first one being unplanned downtime reasons. Now, we do have more things coming here too in the very near future, but the reason I told you before to select custom asset statuses that really tell you something about where that downtime came from, be it an electrical error, mechanical error, an operator error, tool failure, whatever it might be, is so that we can use this report as well as we can. For example, equipment failure here doesn't tell me a whole lot, right? Equipment failure, what does that mean? Whereas if I was able to actually compare, say, tool failure to electrical failure, I know which one of these is more problematic and where I should put my effort into or where I should invest into. So if you're root cause, this is going to be really helpful. The other one, of course, let's take a look at our mean time between failures and our mean time to repair. Now, this is pulling again direct from your asset statuses. Mean time between failures, we want to be as high as possible. It's time between downtime incidents. And mean time to repair, we want to be as small as possible. It's time for something to be fixed. Now, in here, you can see I've got some variations over time. It's pulling in the data at each data point. Because I have this graph grouped by week, it's pulling in everything, the data from that week. So this is the week beginning Sunday, 27th of April, showing me my mean time between failures was this, and my mean time to repair was this. I also like to look at the availability over time. It's just a good early warning signal. If something's gone slightly down, we might want to take a look into that and pull everything together. Of course, you might not want to come in here and go looking for all that information every time. That might be a lot to do, a lot to dig through. So something I usually do for my customers right at the beginning is make sure we set up together a custom dashboard. So I'm going to call this one Asset Health at a Glance. And I'm going to pull in all the things that are most important to me. So think about what is most important to you and pull those things into there. I've put in my most problematic assets. I'm going to put in my unplanned downtime reasons. I'm going to put in my mean time between failures and my mean time to repair. And I also like my asset availability over time. Those are my personal favorites. Now, the reason that I say do this is A, because then we have this information just in one place, but also a really handy feature that a lot of people don't know about is you can just pin this. And when we pin this, what it means is every time that you go into your reporting, your first page is going to be just those reports you care about. So you don't have to dig down into it and find it. And you can monitor the trends over time. Something that's quite niche, I think. It's okay if you've been using this and you haven't noticed it so far, but it's really handy to know. Did you notice when I hovered over mean time between failures and mean time to repair here, I've got these green check marks and it says your organization aims for MTBF greater than 200 hours and an mean time to repair below 35. Now, if we look at my numbers, I'm completely smashing those goals. Those aren't challenging enough goals for my team. So what I do is I go to see goals and I can actually set what I want these thresholds to be for my organization. So in my case, I want my mean time between failures to be above 850 hours. I want my mean time to repair to be below 17 hours, hopefully. And I want my asset availability way above 80%. I want my asset availability at 95%. And there we go. I've set those. And if I go back into my reporting, I can see that my goals will be adjusted. So a lot of information there, a lot of ways that you can kind of slice it and dice it to make sure you are measuring your asset health. But I'll give you, as usual, just a few best practices to cement it. First thing, create actionable plans to address the top causes of unplanned downtime. Use that unplanned downtime reasons graph. Use it for cause analysis. Use it to dig into what we want to change, and use your asset type grouping to give you a good idea of where to go. Secondly, review your asset health goals regularly to stay focused on continuous improvement. Now, I'm going to link this with our best practice right here, because if we're setting goals, yes, we want to make sure they're challenging, but no, we do not want them to be way out in the ether, way too far for our team to go to. Those aren't going to be motivating. So first, before you do that, make sure you establish a baseline so you understand what your current normal is. What is your foundation? And then we can build our performance-based targets. And last point here, of course, use asset criticality to refine your asset health reports. I gave a couple of suggestions for asset criticality, but whatever asset criticality means to you and your organization, make sure it is communicated, make sure it is standardized, make sure we follow that, and you're good to go.
All right. Thank you, Mary, for those best practices. Now, some key takeaways for our entire section. We will be going into the frequently asked questions in just a minute, but some key takeaways. First, using a modern CMMS gives you a solid foundation for managing your assets. You can't improve what you don't track, and a good system helps you do both. So one like MaintainX, wink, wink. Now, second, digitizing your assets isn't just about getting rid of papers and spreadsheets. It's what lets you plan smarter. It helps you identify trends and take action before your assets break down and cost you a lot more than you want them to. Third, keeping an eye on asset status helps you stay connected to what's really going on across your whole floor. And finally, the more asset data you have, the easier it is to track. You can also make smarter decisions, allocate your resources, and tackle what actually matters to you. So once you've digitized those assets, make sure you're linking them to other parts of your org, like your work orders and your locations, and actively recording accurate asset statuses. That is how you're going to go from just being in reactive maintenance to proactive maintenance and managing your assets efficiently. Okay. Like I said, I promise we're going to get into the frequently asked questions. So, Mary, I'm going to be putting you on the hot seat here. Are you ready for this first question?
Sure am.
Okay. So, first question is, how do I ask for new packages to be added for my organization?
Absolutely. So just like we did before, if you're searching something in the Asset Hub, for example, if we are in the Asset Hub right here and it's not pulling anything up, it will say request asset right here. And you just click on request asset, you put the information in and submit that request.
Perfect. Short and sweet. I love it. Okay. Second question. Why doesn't the Asset Hub block me from adding multiple packages to my org? I have duplicates in my org now.
Okay, so good question. The thing is, you might want that, right? You might want for the same asset to be in your org multiple times. Like you might have multiple forklifts. So MaintainX isn't going to stop you from importing that same package multiple times because you might have multiple of the same asset. And in fact, a lot of people do. If I think particularly about like my fleet management customers, for example, they have a lot of versions of the same asset. So we don't want them just to be able to import a given truck once. We want them to be able to do it as many times as they need to for the fleet that they have.
Okay. Makes sense. Now, question 3. What happens to my open work orders when I transfer an asset from one organization to another?
Yeah, great question. So transferring assets is really an important thing to note. Within MaintainX, you can change an asset from organization to organization as much as you need. Again, really handy for fleets in particular. Essentially, if you have a multi-org account set up, you're able to go in here, click on the 3 dots, and you'll see transfer to a new account in here or transfer to a different organization, which means this will no longer be in this location. It's going to be in another of my organizations here. Now, when you do that, the work orders that are open will not transfer with it. They will be closed. You can still see the history. You can still see the information in there, but the open work orders are not going to stay open in the new organization.
Okay. All right. Question 4. What insight am I getting on my assets while using the asset health based report versus the work order based MTBF or MTTR reports?
Also great question. So you may be able to see mean time to repair and mean time between failures within your work orders report. And you can also see it in your asset health report. And you're thinking, why are those numbers different? It's because they're pulling from different places. I do recommend using asset health over work orders because work orders, it's just that, it's pulling from your work orders. So your mean time to repair in your work orders is calculated as the time from when that work order was opened or when it passes its start date until when it's completed. And this is only for reactive work orders, of course, by nature of the metric. But that means that if someone forgets to close something out, that's adding hours on. You can't go back and edit it and change it. Or if it's open too early, same thing. We're not getting accurate numbers in there. Exactly the same principle, mean time between failures. Whereas within the asset health section, it's pulling right from where you log the asset status. And the importance of that is what we discussed today. You can go back and edit that when needed. If someone has said it's offline for 3 days longer than it actually was, you can go back and amend that. So you're getting much more accurate data in the asset health portion, even if you're recording it manually. If you're automating it, of course, that's going to be the most accurate. But even if we're recording things manually, your asset health mean time to repair and mean time between failures are going to be far more insightful than your work orders ones will.
All right. Okay, last question. So I've already got an expansive asset list. Is it possible to have the details in the packages added without creating a new asset?
Mm. Yeah, if the asset is already in your organization and you have the manufacturer field and the model field filled out, you should see the option to fill in the rest of the information because it is connected to the Asset Hub. So it will link those two and be able to pull in the info for you.
Gotcha. Okay, so much value in that brain of yours, Mary. And folks, if you want to pick at Mary's brain even more, or other folks like Mary in the company, join our office hours. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But last poll for today. Okay, I might have lied, but a little quick poll here just to take a little pulse check on how today's session felt for you. It only takes a second to rate your experience, and it helps us understand what's landing well. You'll also be getting a post-webinar email today with a bunch of links. One of them will be a link to a longer survey, not too long, okay, 2 minutes at the most. And if you're able to share more detailed feedback, we'd love to hear it. We use what you tell us to shape future webinars. So yeah, we want to make sure that everything's actually helpful and relevant to you, and every response truly counts. Now, if you're looking for more ways to learn about MaintainX, first up, you can head to MaintainX Academy. This is our self-paced learning hub, and here you'll find certification courses, step-by-step videos, all our past webinar recordings, plus links to register for office hours where you can go and ask questions that are more specific and relevant to your org and to your industry. And then we've got MaintainX Community, where maintenance professionals essentially come together to connect, share insights, and get answers. So if you've got a question, post it there, connect with other people that are in the same field as you, and just learn from others. And if you're not using MaintainX yet, but you want to see how it could work for your team, then click the button on your screen to speak to an expert. You can book a demo through this link, and someone from our team will follow up and walk you through MaintainX. Now, again, please keep an eye out for that email you'll get today with a recording for this webinar, all the links that we just talked about, and other resources. On behalf of the whole team here, I want to say thank you. And Mary, any final words from you before we let everyone go?
Thank you guys for joining. Assets is a huge topic. There is so much information to cover. So I hope we hit the points that you needed. We try and do the things that are going to apply to the most amount of people. So I hope you learned something. I hope it was valuable. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the MaintainX team, either support, your account manager, your customer success manager. We're always here to help.